So I put out the question as the title, is meditation helpful? And firstly, I didn't distinguish in the title what helpful for what. Helpful to become quieter, helpful to become more comfortable with your own time. But I presume you mean helpful to become enlightened, or presume most people think. That's what I meant. So there is nothing which can be more helpful to get you enlightened. There's nothing. Because that's already the case. It's just there's an energy that's identified with a person. And no matter what that person does, that person can't relax back into what you truly are, even though sometimes I might say it, or some teachers might say, relax back into who you are. But that person can't do it, because that person's a character moving in time. You already are who you are. That stillness is already looking through the eyes, is experiencing all of this. But in the character's world, there is this energy which contracts everything to make it feel like that person's the experiencer, and that person is the one that will get enlightened. But that person is an experience that's moving in time, that comes and goes, that's here sometimes and not other times. And that's not who you are. You're that which always stays, that which is always present, that which is. And you can't really say in the positive, in language, what you are. It's easy to say what you're not. So most people would say your consciousness, your presence, even me would say that. You're the alive presence, the I am, or the big I, or the big self. But that's impossible to describe. How could you describe what you are? Because everything that you describe is moving in time. And we're talking about something which is timeless and spaceless. It has no distance. It has no time. It's always here. Who you are is a mystery. Who you are doesn't think, doesn't comprehend in time, doesn't comprehend in words. Words appear in it. So it's the character that understands these words. It's the character that interprets these words. But what actually hears these words is who you truly are, is the big self. But the character interprets it. The character hears it and then puts it into time and understands in time. So meditating can't get you to that place, because who would get to that place? Who wakes up? I do think meditation can be really good at relaxing the person. And helping that person deconstruct what is true and what isn't true. So sitting in silence can help the mind slow down and see that you're not the thoughts, you're not the feelings, you're not the story of you, you're not time, you're not an idea. When you're just solely identified, normally the mind is super busy and always thinking about what it's got to do, what it's got to do, what it's got to do. So meditation is like the reverse. Sometimes meditation can create obsessive thinking. It also can slow down. And I think that can be super helpful. And I get the feeling that the person has to relax to an extent in order for this message to be heard, because when it's really busy, there's just total focus on the identity and what the identity has or hasn't done. I think meditation can also be good for the person to become a more balanced person, a more integrated person. I think constant activity and constant doing something isn't good for the species. I think it's something that's only evolved over the last 100 years of constant activity that's normally evolved in thought or thinking. Watching TV, working on the computer, talking on the phone, talking with friends, listening to talks. It's constantly using the mind. The reason that people don't meditate is because when you first start doing it, it is really uncomfortable. I remember when I first started meditating, I was lucky I was very young, so I think that it was easier to get into. But I felt like my mind was like you know those really bouncy balls that you can get? I felt like it was like a bouncy ball had been let off inside my head, and it was like boom, 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 maybe like a ping pong or something. And it was just like overkill thinking. And then through time, it got quieter and quieter. And then when it gets quieter, it's so easy to see that who you think yourself to be as that character moving in time isn't who you are, isn't the experiencer, cannot be the experiencer, because it's something that comes and goes, whether you like something or don't like something, your memory of something. But there's something else that's always present that isn't attached to that person. This impersonal big self. So it's okay not to do something. And what also can happen is this habit of when you're just totally reactive and totally reacting into something, you can get into a habit of going and sitting and meditating, and rather than reacting and acting something out for hours and hours and hours, you sit and you let the feelings come up and you let the feelings pass through the system, and you see that your projections of the situations aren't actually the reality, they're just simply your projections. That's not meaning to make you passive. It doesn't mean that you don't act and you don't say to someone, don't behave like this towards me. But it's just showing you that they're your projections, and if you're stuck in them for hours, it means that there is a deep attachment to those projections, and that you don't understand yourself because you're not understanding why you're getting stuck in something for hours, why you're getting caught in the loop. And normally it's because of something that you're unconscious about, like a feeling underneath the anger or the rage that feels unloved or unwanted, and you need to be able to express that to the person. Otherwise you'll keep getting stuck in the loop of being angry with them and trying to convince them of something, because underneath maybe you're feeling afraid and lonely or scared. And that's not about freedom. Like, everybody's going to have that, enlightened or not. They're going to get stuck in their projections to a certain extent. But it does relax. There is a relaxing of that, so you don't get stuck in them for hours. And even when you are reacting, you see that it's absolutely not true. You know it's not true. It's simply your mind coming up with a thought and an idea that's not true, that somebody's an asshole. That isn't true. There is no definitive way of defining if someone's an asshole or not. But that doesn't mean that you don't label them as that and say, I don't want you in my life anymore, because sometimes that's appropriate. But it's just seeing that you cannot find truth in a thought. Thoughts come and go, and they're useful in the moment in order to put up good boundaries and make security and make friends and do your human stuff. But that's not reality. It's not the truth of the situation. It's the way your brain works. And your brain isn't depicting reality the way things really are. It's working on the way that it is conditioned and the way that it's wired. And there's nothing wrong with that, your condition and your way of wiring. But when you're unconscious about it and deeply identified with it, then you can get stuck in really negative loops for hours and hours, for lifetimes. And that's not necessary. So if you're feeling stressed by someone's behavior, so if, say, them leaving a mess constantly, so say if you're married and your partner's always leaving a mess and it really begins to stress you out, you acknowledge what's happening. Okay, I feel stressed out. Maybe it makes you feel out of control, and maybe it feels like too much work for you. And that's not unreasonable, having those thoughts. That might be the case. It's not that you ignore those thoughts and say, okay, the partner's right, he's totally allowed to leave mess and destruction and I always have to clean it up. That's not the case. You can say to them, you know, I want a cleaner house. You've got to understand they might not want to do that. So you see that that's the problem, and you see the feelings that makes me feel out of control, that I can't control his behavior. It makes me feel overworked. It makes me feel unloved. And you begin to understand what your body's saying. And ideally, you'd be able to communicate that in a relationship. But a lot of the time, other people aren't into this. And so if other people aren't into this, what you actually do by oversharing how you feel, you lose power, and they'll just use that over you to get power. So only share if the other person shares as well. If the other person isn't sharing themselves, then don't share. Because you can try and see if that makes them share, but they'll, from my experience, they'll just use that as a way to convince you. They'll say, see, you feel unloved. It's nothing to do with my messiness. It's because you've got childhood traumas from feeling unloved or something. And then you think, oh, okay, so I've got to work with that, and the house is allowed to be a mess. I know all the spiritual games. I've been in this for so long. And so that's not what's being said here at all. You're allowed to want to have a clean house, and you have to find a compromise with your partner in order to feel like both of your needs are being met. And that's a reasonable thing to do, to sit down and work out how to meet both of your needs. If they don't want to be tidy and you want to be tidy, how do you come to a resolution of that conflict? It's not that the person that wants to be tidy is right, and it's not the one that wants to be messy is right. It's something that you have to come to a compromise with. But you're also allowed to bring something up. Spirituality isn't about taking somebody else's shite. It's okay that he's messy, I'm just going to work on my ego, and when I get over my ego, I won't want mess anymore. It's just a human game. Okay, let's look at some other questions. Hi, Nudge. Oh, sweet. Lots of love. Hi, Edith. Oh. Hi, Lisa. I learn a lot from your videos. My question regarding meditation is if you consider it like a previous step towards understanding. As I ask it, I don't think steps would be a word you'd use, but I have been meditating on and off for years and I found health benefits in it. Yeah, I think it's really good for the person. I started meditating really young, and I think it was really good for me. So it was really healthy for me. It helped slow my mind down. It helped me understand my body better. It helped me become in more in contact with my sensation. But that one who's meditating, so that one that's trying to stay present, that one never wakes up. It's that movement back to what that one appears in, that presence in which that one that's putting effort into meditation appears in. Maybe meditating is part of the path. Maybe if there was no meditation, then it won't be realized. But it's seeing that it's not about you getting somewhere. You don't get enlightened. But yeah, I think meditation is a really healthy thing to do for the majority of people. And I sit a lot, but I don't meditate. I don't have like a practice where I put my attention on the breath or anything. I just sit there, and then sometimes my mind thinks, and then it kind of stops thinking, and then it thinks, and I just enjoy that. But when I was younger, I used to put the attention on the breath and put the attention on the body. I used to step through the body. Hi Lisa, good to see you. Hope you're fine. Thanks, Thomas. Hi Monica. Hi Lisa, nice to see you. Where to start meditating? Is testing yourself the same as meditation? Is testing yourself? I think that you've put a spelling error there. Where to start meditating? You can, I'm sure you can look up meditation online. What I used to do was I used to do something called the mindfulness of breathing, where you counted your breath in. So 1, It goes out. 2, 3, and you put your attention on that. Then when you get to 10, you start again. And then often when you first start, you end up at 100 and then you realize, oh crap, I meant to start again. So you just keep going to 10 and then back and then 10. But I gave that exercise to a friend of mine recently, and they've got very high intelligence and they could do that and simultaneously think. And then another one I used to do is just stepping through the body. And then sometimes I do like meditations with you guys, but just realize that that one that's wanting to get somewhere isn't the one that gets enlightened. So that one that's meditating isn't the one that gets enlightened, but I think it's super healthy to do. And I think it will make you more calm and relaxed. And as you're more calm and relaxed, there's a good chance that this will be seen. Hi, Bruce. Hi, Lisa. Seems like when you speak, it could be Awakeness speaking or Lisa speaking, 2 different entities using the same mouth. Is that right? Well, everything is the absolute, so everything comes from the absolute, but it comes through this vessel of Lisa, and Lisa contains a character. So it's freedom, which is speaking now, always freedom, which is speaking, which is thinking, but it goes through the Lisa system, and then when it goes through the Lisa system, it will have the Lisa qualities and it will use the Lisa mind. So Lisa won't suddenly be able to start talking about engineering. There's always the possibility, but that's not been in the Lisa story to learn about engineering. So, you know, being an astronaut or something like that, it's unlikely that Lisa character would speak about that, but non-duality is something that's been experienced in Lisa's life, so it fits in with the character. But you never know, maybe I'll start speaking in tongues suddenly, like, and or speaking Japanese. There's always the possibility of miracles. I remember reading a scientific experiment that they made equations of how often a miracle will happen, because there's always like an alternative possibility to what's happening, but it's such a tiny percentage that alternative will happen. Oh, I forget the experiment. I'm not very good at remembering things, but it was very cool. I kind of feel things. That's the way my body works. So I remember in images, and then coming to speak about it is harder. So you can see I'm speaking very personally. So I speak through the Lisa filter, like there is through the Lisa character. So it goes through the Lisa body character. So it uses memories of Lisa, it uses stories of Lisa. But ultimately what's looking out now and what's really speaking now is the absolute, which is no one, which is impersonal, through that character. So a lot of people think that the way that I speak or other teachers speak is dismissing the character or dismissing the personal, and that's not meant to be the case. The reason why they think we're dismissing it is because I say that it's not the person that wakes up. So other teachers might say it's the person that wakes up, and to be honest with you, I don't care. It's their way of speaking, and you know, if you resonate with them, it doesn't mean I'm right or they're right, or I'm wrong or they're wrong. It's just different ways of speaking about it. And because of the way that it's seen here, I'll say that I'm right, and because of the way it's seen there, they'll say that they're right. And most people would go to war about these sorts of things, but I don't really care. But what I know some people say about the way I speak is that it doesn't deal enough with the person. And so I try to define when I'm speaking about the absolute and the relative, and I do think that there is healthier ways of being and there's unhealthy ways of being on the human level. And I think that a lot of the time what people just want is a bit more happiness in the flow of life. They don't actually want waking up, they just want a bit more happiness and a bit more relaxation. Waking up will happen when waking up happens, And I think when listening to me, there's a resonance with this message, and so it does settle something down. But in everyday life, sometimes people have very negative patterns, and I would recommend to all people to, learn psychology, study, understand yourself, understand your character, understand what the character wants. Often people don't know what they want, so they're in situations and they're being super passive aggressive and angry all the time because deep down they don't want what they have. They want something else, but they can't. They're too scared to admit that to themselves, so then they come out as angry or aggressive or hateful to other people. So it's like, learn what the character wants, understand what you're doing, understand the way you're communicating with people. And this is going to make the person more happier and more relaxed. And then more than likely, as the person relaxes more and chills out more and stops being so neurotic and addicted to its patterns and negative cycles, then this message can be heard that you are presence. If the person is really tight and suffering and contracted, then it's really caught in itself, and all it can hear and think about is itself. So in no way am I saying don't do positive things for yourself. And I think that's what sometimes teachers like me are saying, like it's God's will, and if God wants positive things for you, then God will give you positive things. But that's not the case. It is the case in one way, on the ultimate level, but on the human level, you have to put effort in. You have to put effort into changing your life. It's not just going to be suddenly like a massive like and your life is going to change. It's normally that you put effort in to stop going into the negative and to see through the bullshit. It's not like a magic wand. It is in one way, but normally it comes through, like I studied meditation, I studied psychology, I did lots of therapy, I worked on my person, I purposely sat through very difficult feelings, I learned to be by myself, I learned to travel by myself, I learned to face fears, I learned to not always give in to to fears or whatever it is. So on the human level, that can happen, and it feels like it's you doing it. So you wake up and you're like, oh, I can either sit and play computer games all day and watch TV all day, or I can set my alarm to get up. And the intention is you set your alarm to get up and do things. Whether it actually happens is down to the divine, is down to life, but it's like the person has to function as if it's working in cause and effect. So if you want to be more happier, then you're going to have to put effort into doing more positive things. And you know that being addicted to the computer and being on the computer all the time, or watching porn all the time, or I'm not saying you don't have to, you can do these things, but doing it all the time, or what other things is it? Binge eating, or eating bad food, eating lots of sugars, never exercising, being obese. None of these things are going to make you, none of these things are promoting happiness and well-being and balance in the body. Like, all these things are important, like, and sitting at home waiting for that happiness bell to go off because you listen to non-duality, it's not like that. You've got to actively make steps to making the person more balanced. And when non-duality is going to be heard, it will be heard. More than likely, if you just stay in your negativity and in your patterns, nothing's going to change, and it's not going to be heard. So I can say to you, put your hand in the air, and you can put your hand in the air. You think you did it. It feels like you did it. It feels like I put my hand in the air. I put my hand up. So that's what it feels like. But as you wake up, you see actually it's just happening. The hand is being put in the air, and there's nobody that does it, but it appears through the body-mind mechanism of Lisa and the character of Lisa and the character of you. So that's the important part. There's this distinction between the absolute and the relative.